Welcome to the Player 3 podcast. My name is Rick, and as always, I'm here with my amazing co-host, Tisha, who we've had not beef in the sense of competitiveness with sports.
Okay.
We've had beef on other things many times, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think one of the biggest things is you've said that you love all sports and stuff, but
I do.
we've had the World Cup.
Yes.
And you've been supporting England,
Yes,
which
I
is
have.
the correct team to support, obviously,
It is,
for
yes.
no apparent reason.
I love England. That's the reason.
Well, yes, you do love England. But has football or soccer, as you say, become your main sport now? Or are you still towards, I know you like American football and we've watched an ice hockey game before and stuff like that. How does soccer fit into this now? Because obviously you've also been to the UK and watched a mediocre team. Mediocre team of Manchester.
I know. Well, listen, I think of, so I've talked about this before. Oh no, I've talked about this before. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Yep.
I think of things like a smorgasbord, like a charcuterie board. I think I've talked to you about charcuterie boards before. Is that correct?
You've mentioned them to me before.
Okay, so a charcuterie board is basically like this flat board that has all of these snacks on it. So it could be anything that you want. It could be like bits of chocolate, and it could be almonds, like nuts and cheeses and fruits and whatever else you might want to snack on. And so I think of sports in that way. I like all of the sports. And on any given day, I may really want to partake more in football, like, England in the World Cup football.
Yep.
And then maybe I want to experience, American football. I was a cheerleader for like in high school. Like I love football and basketball. And so for me, I am not a diehard on any of them, but I'd rather watch American football on TV. I'd rather watch football, World Cup football in person. I like watching baseball a lot in person. Okay. I do enjoy golf. I don't play myself, but like I used to play softball. I'm telling you, I like all the sports and I'm going to cheer for all the sports. And I know there are sports out there that I probably am not sure of, but football, as you said, has always been part of my life because, I got to see Man City play. So, I mean, despite your opinion on Man City, it was an amazing experience for an American.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
And I'm not like, I'm in Texas, so I thought I knew culture of sports, but I really didn't. There's nothing like that. Yeah, it is a different level. So, speaking of sports, I am going to introduce our guest, and I am so honored to introduce Eric Kussin here with us today. And I am not going to tell you everything about him like I always do for guests, because this episode is really going to be all about Eric. Eric is, I will tell you, the founder of Same Here Global, a nonprofit organization focused on changing how society, all of us, understands and talks about mental health. And I happen to have this little bookmark, Eric. If you are listening and you are not watching this episode, there we go. We all have them. And actually, I keep this on my fridge for my 16-year-old son. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But welcome to the Play at 3 podcast, Eric. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you. I when the podcast starts with discussions of sports, I already feel I'm at home. So.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of sports, I am just going to segue into that because you have a history of working in the is it the NBA and the NHL? And listen, anybody who listens to the Play Ed 3 podcast knows Rick could talk about hockey for days. And so I know his ears perked up when he heard that. But tell us a little bit about the teams that you worked for. And I know Rick is going to have some follow-up questions for you as well.
Yeah, of course. So when I was graduating college, it was a time when, we were talking about generations, Tish. So everyone, my year was going into finance or investment banking, and I applied to 4 places: the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, and Major League Baseball. Okay.
Amazing.
And I wanted to stay in New York City. So that was number 1. But also, I knew that sports business was my passion because I'd done 4 internships. So I was a kid who was 13, 14 years old who was filling out not brackets the way that we know them now in the NCAA tournament, but filling out like an NBA draft bracket, making my decisions on which players I thought should be drafted in what order. And so I went to go work for the New York Jets for an internship, Long Island Surf, which was a basketball team, minor league basketball team here, International Management Group, and kind of that agency. And then when I actually, speaking of Manchester, Rick, I was out in Crystal Palace working for the London Towers when I studied abroad in London. So I'm graduating. It's kind of a cool story for folks who just find industry jargon and paths enlightening. So I didn't go to my intro to marketing class very often in college because when you're in college and you don't love schoolwork, you can skip. And despite the fact that, yes, I feel fortunate I went to Cornell University, I probably didn't take advantage of it. It was a great experience. But I definitely, when there was a 9:05 class, we would call them 9:05s, and I would be like, I'm not waking up for that because we were out the night before. So there was one class freshman year, Intro to Marketing, and the guest lecturer was a guy named Mark Tatum, who was at Major League Baseball, alum of Cornell, about 10 years my senior. So at the time, if I'm 18 years old, he's 28 years old, just getting started in his career. Fast forward my senior year, I mentioned I applied to those 4 spots. I either didn't hear back or got rejection letters from the other 3, but the NBA got back to me and they said, we have a program. It's the only one of the major leagues where we're going to hire 16 people, diverse group of candidates. So let's say Rick would have been applying and he would have had maybe a better chance than me, who has all these people from the Northeast because of where the NBA is located. And so my fraternity brother had a family friend who was already working at the NBA, and my fraternity brother gets hired early in this process, October of our senior year.
Wow.
I figure there's no shot that I'm going to get this, even though I have part of the interview process going on right now. If he's already in and they're looking for a diverse group of candidates, they're only taking 16 people across the entire United States. In my head, I'm thinking 5,000 people applied for this spot, recent graduates. The NBA is looked at as the marketing think tank and the gold standard. There's no way I'm getting this spot. 8 phone interviews later, you really want to date myself. My answering machine is going off. At least it was a digital answering machine. It wasn't with a tape. And it was 8:30 in the morning. And I'm thinking, what are my parents doing? Why are they calling? I'm like hitting the phone with my pillow. And I just hear, hey, Eric, this is Mark Tatum with the NBA. I'm like, Mark Tatum?
Wow.
That's the guy I met. I went to his intro to marketing guest lecture, and I actually was picked out of 5 people in the 250 person class to have lunch with him. And it's right before my internship with International Management Group. So I was like, Mark, we met. He's like, of course, Eric, I remember you. Now to this day, I don't believe Mark actually remembered me then, but he claims when I tell the story that I did. And I ended up going to work my first job at the NBA league office directly for Mark, who was the director of marketing, had switched from Major League Baseball to the NBA. I'll only share on his end because I know you asked about my career. He's gone on to be the deputy commissioner of the NBA now. He's number 2 to Adam Silver, just an incredible position. He's an incredible guy. And from there, I went to team marketing and business operations within the NBA. So David Stern was starting a department within team marketing business operations called Player Fan Connection. And because I'm tall, 6'4", I'm not as tall as these NBA guys, but I was tall enough to be able to play the part. And he needed someone to go in and fly out to the players and each of the teams and the general managers and explain how team revenues are generated. Because you had at the time Amari Stoudemire right from high school, Kevin Garnett right from high school, Kobe Bryant right from high school, LeBron James right from high school. Their perception, because they didn't have business degrees, was our owners are very wealthy. They think I'm worth a certain amount of money. Here's what they're willing to pay me. And they didn't understand ticket sales, sponsorship sales, media rights, arena revenues, and how that's a pie. And what the salary cap is a slice of that pie. And while the percentage slice doesn't go up until there's a collective bargaining agreement, a negotiation 5-6 years at a time, when the pie grows, that slice of the pie grows because the overall pie is growing, right? And so going in and helping them understand that, and at the time, the average player salary was something like $3.5 million, and now you see what these are, and these guys are making the high ends in the 50 millions per year. So I was working, pinched myself thinking about it. Unfortunately, we lost him, and a great man, David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, was the person I was reporting into on that project. Career path wise, I know this whole podcast is not about careers, but just to give you the kind of the full run, I was asked to go help start up a WNBA team, still working for the NBA, but in Chicago. I'd never left New York before. So at 25, 26 years old, I'm traveling out to Chicago Monday through Friday. I've got the credit card for the NBA, which is awesome. I could take the staff out, come home, hang out, party with my friends on the weekend, and then go back out to Chicago. And about 3 months into my time there, their CEO, a woman named Margaret Stender, asked, would you like to come on as our director of sales and service? Now, I had never been a salesperson. I had never run a sales department, but the nice thing was she trusted in me, seeing the camaraderie that I've built with the staff. So that was like my first foray into business management, sales management. And so did that for 2 years. We played in a college arena called the UIC Pavilion, which was run down. It was the only independent WNBA team outside of NBA ownership. So we didn't have the help of the Bulls and the Michael Jordan era to be able to, take the tailwinds of. So it was a tough grind, but we did enough in that 2 years that the Suns then came calling. So I ended up going out to Phoenix. What I liked about the Suns was they had the Mercury as well. So I was able to oversee both the NBA team and the WNBA team like I had been with Chicago. We unfortunately lost to some pretty good guys like Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan on the Suns side of things and only made it to the Western Conference Finals. But on the WNBA side, we won 2 titles in 2007, 2009. With a woman named Diana Taurasi leading our team, who's just a stud. Eventually get called by the Devils. So this is where, Rick, I was telling you, we'll if we want to have Devils Rangers and Islanders Rangers, I'm not going.
I love it. It's like a product placement in that.
It's not like I love the team so much, but it was interesting going to work for the Devils are not the Islanders' rivals. The Rangers are. So going for the Devils, I didn't feel like I was, betraying my family or my friends or anything like that. And so I had a 4-year awesome run. We made it to the Stanley Cup final in 2012, didn't win. So I pinched myself of the places that I got to work, how far we went and how successful those organizations were. And then eventually got hired by the Panthers as their chief revenue officer. This was in 2014, middle of 2014, when this new ownership group, the one that has taken the team to 3 Stanley Cup finals in a row within the last 4 years, meaning last year they didn't make it, but the 3 years before that consecutively. And that was the team, that was the ownership group that I bought into, that I liked their vision. They were West Point grads, military guys. I just loved their process. But unfortunately, which we'll get into because this is, I know, discussion about SEL, school, mental health.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I got sick 6 months into my time when I was with the Panthers. And so that whole run of a sports career got halted right in its tracks at a time when I was not expecting it because I didn't think this topic applied to me at all.
That's a great segue, actually. And I know that your work is so personal. Can you talk to us a little bit? And Rick, yes, we will come back to sports talk, but we're going to get into this because I think that, first of all,
I'm admired.
I know you're admiring Eric. A lot of times if Rick is silent, it's because he's in awe, and that's why I'm taking
most
over
of the
here.
Time.
Here's the thing, Eric. You said a couple of things that I heard. You said that this wasn't a career podcast. I want to just correct you politely and tell you that the people listening are typically teachers and school leaders and some students, actually. And we talk about careers often because there is this myth that students can only take one path out of high school. And you spoke to that a little bit. I was also in that generation where it's like, this is the path you're going to take and this is how it's all going to play out. And now we have, Gen Zers who are not taking those paths and kind of learning from the generations before them. So yes, love that you've shared that career path, because it was not a linear line, and like it wasn't linear. And I think it's very important for anybody who is listening to know that really the universe for you opened up these doors and just kept opening them up every single step you took. And I think that is an alignment that a lot of people usually are not open to. They want to force whatever they were taught. So I think that's the first point I want to make. And then the second thing you said that really resonated with me and will also resonate with Rick is that you got sick and you didn't expect to have to deal with that particular thing in that moment. And I just want to really highlight that, because that has happened to me. That has happened to Rick. That has even happened to my son, a childhood cancer survivor. We're just walking along, doing our thing, and then suddenly we're in the hospital. Like, you cannot plan for some of those things that hit you, but... And I don't know your story. And I told you earlier, I told people not to tell me all of your story because I want to hear it live with our listeners. I think there's always a reason for things like that to stop us in our tracks.
No question.
Because our mission is much bigger than we ever anticipated. And I know that is your story. So I want you to kind of deep dive into what happened, what did you learn, and when did you realize that your experience was going to launch you into what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I for everyone listening, I gave Tish and I gave you, Rick, the green light to interrupt me at any point, because the story's involved, right? And so, having a back and forth versus me telling the whole time
100%.
when anyone was hearing me, know that we'll have back and forth during this. So yeah, I find myself, down in Florida, and if you want to think about life situation, I am 33 years old. What I believe to be at the time, my mentors are telling me, you're the youngest or one of the youngest chief revenue officers in all of sports. You're living in the South Beach area. You're a single guy. This is the highest salary. Not that sports pays so much money, but the highest salary I've made up until that point. I'm a guy who grew up with Oldsmobiles and roll-up windows with my family's cars, and our team has a sponsorship with Lexus, and I have a Lexus lease that I'm driving. So for anyone who's hearing, like, I'm framing that not to pat myself on the back, to say, if you asked me at that time, do I have everything that I want? I'd say, look at this awesome career I've been able to have. And okay, I left New York where my family is, but whoever, like, fully, when you're jumping around, gets to stay in one spot. And okay, guess what? If there's another spot to go to, Miami's a pretty freaking good place to go. So that was my mindset for 6 months. We were given the keys. I was hired along with a new team president. So he's the number one. I'm essentially the number two at the organization. And he had no sports background. He was their Goldman Sachs and family office guy who was going to learn the business. And I was the guy coming in with the sports experience on revenue generation. And so we're hiring staff. We're setting up the structure, the org chart of the organization. So here's the keys, like, build it the right way here, and you have the resources to do so. Not that it didn't come with its challenges, but that's just that blank slate, instead of having to come in and like, oh, the culture is what it is. Sorry, you got to try to meander and find your way through. And I started about 5.5 months into it. So just as we're getting into about 2015, I start to lose interest in things. I start to not want to go out with my friends after work. I start to not want to go to the gym when work is done, and I get home and I pass out on the couch before even being able to get to the bed. Playing in my own leagues on the weekend, or just picking up a ball to go to the park. You know what? I'm going to stay in on the weekend just because I don't have the energy to go out. Maybe this is my body's way of telling me I need to rest more.
That is the first sign of burnout. If you're a teacher listening, that is your warning sign right there.
Well, and it's, when I show that in a presentation, I show myself in the middle, Eric, the sports executive, and I show these pictures of who am I outside of being Eric, the sports executive. And almost, if anyone remembers the movie, talk about generations, Back to the Future, where him and his sister are fading in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Each of the people who I was outside of Eric, the sports executive, is fading away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because now you're starting to see this blank screen of whiteness, nothing, and just me in the middle as a sports executive. And when you're a teacher, now going back to teachers, you get a tremendous amount of meaning and purpose coming in every day and helping your students.
Right.
But when you start to say, I'm not as interested in going and watching my kid's game after work. I'm not as interested in hanging out with my husband or wife and watching TV. I'm not as interested in that show on the weekend to watch on Netflix and binge watch. That's a sign, as you were saying. But I didn't notice it as a sign because here's what many people do. I said, this is the world's way of telling me I've got this new, interesting, cool job. I need to pour even more into my job. That must be what it means.
Yeah.
And so I would get in the office at 7:30 instead of 8, and I would leave at 11:30 at night instead of 10 p.m. at night, you know? And that my parents, I was having conversations with them, and they've been super supportive my whole life I'm the only one of my brothers, there's 3 brothers, who's traveled outside of New York to take jobs. And so they've been very generous. They're both teachers, by the way, also, if that appears.
Amazing.
So my dad ended up becoming a principal, was an English teacher first, then my mother a language teacher. And so especially when I would go places during the summer, it was easy for them to come because they had time off. And around this time is when I think retirement's happening. So they got a little more free time, and they're hearing in my voice this hesitation. I wouldn't call it trepidation just yet, hesitation. And so it was first my dad came down to help out. And help out means, when you're a single guy, there's things around the house like making dinner or folding the laundry. And so someone he wouldn't have called it burnout. He didn't know anything about mental health.
Right.
It was more like, what can I do to take off your plate so that, but what I did erroneously is any little bit of energy gained because of the help that he gave me, my path in thinking that what would help me get better is I'm going to pour that more into my work. Because when your brain finds something that it can latch onto and it finds the ability to focus, it thinks that it's doing the right thing.
Yes.
And it doesn't realize that actually what you're doing is you're taking a battery that's already on empty and you're saying, can I squeeze as much juice out of it as possible?
Yes.
Again, all things that I know now, but I didn't know back then. So
we didn't. I want to point that out, Eric. Yeah. I mean, like we were talking generations. This is not something that any of the 3 of us and the majority of our listeners even remotely knew about. And if we felt that way, I talked about this with Mary Alice on her episode when she joined us. Even if you remotely knew that something was wrong, you did not bring it up. You did not talk about it. And so I think, even this discussion, like in 2013, in 2003, in 1993, never would have happened. So, I mean, your dad.
I didn't take a step further. Like you mentioned before we started the podcast that you study it now, or you read the books, and if you look at an Instagram world or a social media world that we live in right now, we live in echo chambers. And so let's just say even 30 million people are following what nervous system is. Guess what? There's 8 billion people on the planet. That means 7.7 billion people don't know these things, right?
Exactly.
And I'm amazed every time I go and I speak at a school or I speak at an office or I speak at a company, how many people these concepts are brand new to. And
it surprises me. I said the word somatic physical healing to one of my close friends, and they said, what is that word somatic? We've never heard that. Yep. So to your point. Now back to your dad, he was helping you in the best way that he knew how. And I think a lot of our family members, our friends, they are the ones that typically can hear the issue without really knowing what it is. And so then they are trying to help you. But I think so many teachers, and Rick and I both, resonate with what you said. We're going to get that energy back. Let's pour it back into the thing that is actually burning us out the most. And it's like you need somebody to kind of shake you and go, no.
Well, because human beings are wired for I show people this all the time. And I say, brain up here, body down here.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain can stay fixated and it has a hook into something. It believes it's on the right path.
Yes.
Let me figure. Why do helpers burn out? Because we're able to jump into someone else's misery and say, how do we help you untangle that? But guess what? That burns us out more, right? And we don't recognize that. But the flip of that is if you break an ankle, cognitively, you could think about, the whole RICE with rising up and icing it. And I forget what the ICE stands for.
Yeah, because Rick just his knee actually training for a marathon. And it's so interesting, even how that affected him mentally, right? Like just in the podcast. But I want to point this out. This right here with your mind and your body. My somatic therapist is like, your mind and body are disconnected, and we have to get them online so that you can start listening to each other. For years, they've been separate. And
well, if this analogy is helpful for people, think of your eyes as a video camera, your brain and your body as the hard drive that then stores everything that the video camera records. And the key is the brain/body has no delete button. So even though you might think my memory's bad, your brain is wired, your system is wired to remember everything. It needs to. It stores it in a hippocampus, and then the hippocampal, what they call afferent and efferent nerve fibers, there's up and down messages going between the body, because we need to be wired to remember what happened previously to be able to look at the next thing that's happening and saying, is this safe? Is it not safe? And literally make that decision every new encounter we have. So we think, oh, I lived through that. Oh, that's not something I remember anymore. Oh, that's something I was able to push to the back. And it's not reality. It's still there, even though, and so another analogy that may be helpful is think of then that brain and body as miniature versions of you, like in those Russian nesting dolls. So you are a 2-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 17-year-old, not just ages, you're also the youth sport version of you, the student version of you. And you're these little collections of all these that is now you at your current age. When you start to look at yourself that way, it opens up doors where you go, there's stuff inside of me living somewhere. I don't know where it is. Somatic, right? Okay. Somatic means tissues. The issues are in the tissues, right? It lives inside of you. And when you understand that, then you start to kind of gain a little, I don't want to say mastery, but understanding around, wait a second, me continuously trying to figure things out up here, that's not going to work. And your therapist saying the brain and body are disconnected, for anyone who is fearful of that concept, I'd say that happens to every single human on the planet. It just happens to different levels. And as you become an adult, it's how do we work on reconnecting the two?
I have a question for you. But before I ask you this question, I want to see if Rick has a question for you around something that I see him processing, though. I've been
making a lot of notes, which I don't normally do in an episode. Let's put it that way, because a lot of the things you've said, Eric, has resonated with me so much. Because one thing that we haven't mentioned to you, but we've mentioned on the podcast previously, obviously we mentioned that both of us worked at Wakelet. I was one of the former co-founders of the company and hit a lot of burnout regularly over a 13-year period, which I won't go into too much detail with. But one of the things that obviously I'm very, very curious, when you are going through those mental health issues and you're constantly feeling like you're having to put every single bit of effort into what you're doing, and the moment you get something freed off you dive into it even more. It's like, I always use the analogy, it's like putting a phone on charge at 1% and still using it at max capacity over and over. It's trying to recharge, but at the same time you're constantly using it. Obviously you went on to creating Same Here. And what I'm interested in, joining those two dots together, how did you go from really feeling impacted working as the CRO for Florida Panthers, the story that you've had, the challenges you got, and deciding, I want to create this company? Because you're essentially going from burnout, and I know there's a lot of people, I've felt this the same, where you feel like, I don't want to go through that burnout again, therefore I'm not going to start this company, because I could end up going down that path again, which I don't want to do. How did you have that mentality to say, no, I'm going to go and do this?
There's so many pieces from where we put a pin in it, as I see a pin on your to where I got to that spot. Do you mind if I kind of kind of meander my way through there?
Please do.
So my dad was down there first. Then my mom comes down. They switch places. And now all of a sudden I'm coming to the office and I can't look at emails and read them. For using Generation example, the screen looks like light brights to me, if anyone remembers that game, instead of clean email lines. And I am convincing myself, because this is what athletes do, if I just get it through the day, tomorrow after getting a good night's sleep, it's going to get better. I used to never take lunch. I'm taking an hour lunch by driving 20 minutes as far as I can, laying down with my seat down in a parking lot for 20 minutes to be able to drive back for 20 minutes. That's all I'm doing. Like hoping that these little bursts of rest and then trying to get home at night and rest again, I'm going to recharge in some way, right? But what I didn't realize, right, I usually don't tell the story this way, but is that throughout the day, outside of those rest periods, my brain is going, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? How do I fix it? I can't believe this is going on. Because when you're trying to, now when you've taken the little bit of energy that you have and you pour it into your work, and now the work is no longer a respite for you, because even in it used to being something you could hook onto, you can't even hook onto it now because reading emails is an impossibility. I would get home after work and my mom would say, hey, spend some money, order dinner in instead of making dinner, be easy on yourself. I'd read the menu and not be able to remember what was on the menu for me to call and then have the conversation with the person on the phone.
The smallest tasks were so mountainous, right? Like I have felt that too. Like there is too much on here and you're going to ask me to make another choice. Like I know you're trying to help me, but it is another choice for me to choose what I'm going to eat. Yeah, absolutely.
Choice. And then even, what gets called working memory is the ability to hold on to something and then do something. And we take for granted as human beings that just comes to us naturally. That's a processing part of the brain that starts to go offline when there's no energy left for the system to be able to handle that. And so, at this point now, I got to make a decision because my brain is not working. And I speak to our team president and I say, I don't know what to do anymore. And the owner comes, I said, my brain is not functioning. And
Eric, did you ask, I just want to ask this because you mentioned, you hit on it a little bit briefly, and my pattern recognition is wild and awesome. Did you ask yourself, what is wrong with me? Were you finding yourself asking, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? What is wrong with my brain? And is that kind of like what you kept landing on as far as, because for me, I think in burnout, it's like, it's my fault. Like I am the problem. My brain is the problem. Is that what you were thinking? And the reason I asked that is because my narration has changed to what happened to cause me to feel this way. So I'm just curious if that was
speaking of pattern recognition, the whole concept of what happened to me instead of what's wrong with me. Let's hold on to that and come back to it when I go into building the organization of what Rick talked about, because that's a key nuance to what I realized needs to change in this space. So my owner was extremely supportive at this time. He said, I'm in the military, I know people go through things. At the time, I don't know what things are. I don't know if I had a brain tumor, traumatic brain injury.
Generic.
I literally thought I maybe was having an active aneurysm at the time. Like as weird as that may sound, because you'll just drop right there. The dysfunction that I was feeling was so off, I couldn't imagine what it possibly is. Or is it this thing called mental health that I don't know anything about? In 2015, no one's talking about this stuff. Kevin Love hadn't, in my world, hadn't come up with this story. DeMar DeRozan hadn't. Michael Phelps hadn't come up with it. Prince Harry maybe had dipped his toe a little bit in it, but Britney Spears and Lindsay Lohan, no, that didn't resonate with me. So he says to me, take as much time as you need. Take 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Go home, go to New York where you're from. He's a New York guy too. He's from Queens. He's like, see the best doctors, spare no expense. We'll put you on short-term disability if any of these doctors cover take your insurance. If not, it's worth it to go out of pocket, Eric. Get the best doctors. You'll come back. We love what you're building here. So I go back to New York. And I have a twin bed in my house, right? And I told you my size. I'm 6'4", like 250. And so I'm laying in that bed and I go to my first doctor and I leave the first doctor, which is called a psychopharmacologist. That's what I'm told to go to. People who are psychiatrists, but now to the next level, mix medications in terms of a cocktail. He has me fill out a chart. I circle from 1 to 5. I agree or don't agree with this statement. I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. Life is awful, blah, blah, blah. He hands a paper back to me in the meeting. He goes, you, my friend, have and I'll be clean with the words, S ton of anxiety on top of an S ton of depression. You need heavy artillery for it to be knocked out of you. I left that day for the first time taking medication with 5 prescriptions.
Wow.
Okay. 5 prescriptions, all to be taken at once. And for anyone who thinks that's ridiculous to follow that path, keep in mind that in this country, Rick, I know it's not so dissimilar, even though there's a different medical system.
Yeah.
But in this country and in the westernized world, we get sick when we're a little kid. We're told we have strep throat, bronchitis, or pneumonia, and that gets proven by a test that's given to us. They take a throat culture, they put it in the red thing with the disc, and then they come back. They say, oh, it came back positive. And then you take the antibiotic, and then 2 days later, your throat doesn't feel like it has razors in it anymore. You're like, this thing's amazing. I want to know what I'm sick with because that fixes it when I know that there's something that can actually attack that thing that's wrong with me. Why wouldn't we think the same thing in mental health if that's the background that we have when we're sick, when we're kids, that when you feel lethargic and run down and brain fog and malaise and cognitive distortions, all of which you feel when you have strep throat, bronchitis, pneumonia, flu, what have you, you're going to go and say, tell me what label is wrong with me like you did before and tell me what fixes that label. So when I would go from, even though it was amoxicillin, they would also tell me to take this over-the-counter thing. And they put this pack on you, heat pack or ice pack or whatever. You were given a bunch of things to do. So it's not so far-fetched to be told, take these 5 medications because your chemicals are off and now we got to balance them out, right?
It's that trust that you're giving.
And these are top doctors.
Yes.
I was sparing no expense. These are $250 to $400 an hour doctors that with Ivy League educations, you know that I went to Cornell. I'm not trying to knock the Ivy Leagues, but like, these people have the most advanced degrees, and this is the process that they believe in, that they are not talk therapists. They dole out medication because they can uniquely determine what's wrong with you based on you giving your symptoms, and they're going to concoct this mixture that's going to fix you, right? And so when you do that, and that's your path, you feel like, back to your question, Tish, about did you feel like you were broken? Of course, I thought, my brain is a soup of chemicals. That's all I was picturing my brain as literally a soup. And the soup doesn't taste the right way. The wrong ingredients are in there. And now they're giving me new ingredients to try to make the soup go back to taste like tomato bisque or New England clam chowder or whatever your soup is that it's supposed to taste like. So fast forward 2.5 years of absolute dysfunction. I did not leave my bed. I woke up every morning. I describe it as no original thoughts coming to my brain. I would just stare at the ceiling going, it's another day. I just have to make it through the day, hoping that this new cocktail of medication that the last doctor just gave me is going to kick in at the 4 to 6 week mark. And that became my cadence over and over and over again. And so I didn't watch TV. I didn't listen to podcasts. I literally laid in bed shivering like this, sweating from sympathetic response to my nervous system, but at the time is what I think is anxiety. Okay. And I can't move. And so I'm also at the same time, because this is the suggestion of these top doctors, getting talk therapy, but I can't even engage in talk. Back to what somatic work is when we get into that. There aren't words coming to my mouth from my brain to be able to even engage in a back and forth. But the gold standards, if you go to all the largest nonprofit websites in our country and many even in the UK, I know a lot of them, the 2 gold standards are med management and talk therapy. I'm doing both of those and not getting any better. So eventually a doctor tells me up in Connecticut, you've tried all the software changes. Imagine this being described. We've tried all the software changes with the neurochemicals, 52 different combinations over 2.5 years. Now we got to try hardware changes. It must be the neurons themselves in your brain, because a neuron has neurochemicals. It fires across a synapse to a postsynaptic neuron. And that's what creates a thought, feeling, behavior, emotion, the ability to feel calmness. Well, it must not be the neurochemicals themselves. It must be the neurons that are the issue. We got to get the neurons firing the right way. So that explanation makes sense to me. because if the medications weren't working, what will? Okay, this is something new. Let's try it. So I do something called TMS therapy, which is called transcranial magnetic stimulation. They put this moon-shaped object above your head and they shoot electromagnetic waves, kind of like what's in an MRI machine, into your brain. And they know they're hitting the right spot, they believe, because you jump with this thing called the motor threshold, that your thumb jumps, and now they've got the right spot. And they literally keep a cap that they hold for you for your measurements so they know where to hit you each time. So I do 23 sessions of that 23 days in a row. Why? Because it's $350 a session out of pocket, and they're going to stay open on Saturday and Sunday if they're making $350 a session. And on the morning of the 24th, and I have no problem talking openly about this, if schools want to contact me and just have personal conversations about how do we address this topic, because it's needed, especially as I'm talking on a day when an other NFL player died by suicide, we just found out, is I'm staring at a bottle of pills in my room, and this thought comes over my mind at 4 a.m, swallow that bottle, swallow that bottle, swallow that bottle, playing on a record on repeat. I've never looked at a bottle of pills as anything that could hurt me before. Why is this jumping into my head? It's not something that I want, contrary to most people believe about suicide. You made the choice. You made the decision. At this point, I'm not making any choice, any decision. A decision is being made for me, and I'm this alternate ego in my mind. So the way that I describe the kids is, in your own brain, you are two different versions of wrestlers of yourself at the same time, wrestling each other. You're a strong senior with a lot of muscles who's experienced. That's the one that has the ideations that's saying, do it, do it, do it, do it. The you that you know is a weaker freshman who's never lifted a weight in his life and never been given any instructions in wrestling. And you know that you want this weaker wrestler to beat the stronger one in your brain. You just have no idea how to fight it. And you're like, if I go in the ring without any skills, without any muscle, I'm going to succumb to it. I was able to form that picture in my mind at the time, and I knew if I can't fight it on my own, I need help. I was sitting on my hands with my knees shaking. The reason I'm sitting on my hands is because I had to stop myself from lunging at the bottle.
Yeah.
Because the weaker wrestler in me was trying to fight that stronger wrestler. And so I told my parents, you got to take me somewhere because I'm not going to get better unless you get me help. So I go inpatient to Cornell Med. Okay. Ivy League facility. The attending psychiatrist at Cornell Med is a Harvard trained doctor. She's got her top doctor plaques all over the walls. And she looks at my chart, the 52 meds, the TMS therapy, and she uses these two words that I hear way too often now when families come to me because they hear my story, because there's a path that traditional medicine goes down with psychiatry. And those two words are, Eric, you've tried everything. Your last resort is to do ECT. ECT stands for electroconvulsive therapy or shock therapy, as what we've seen in the movies. And I don't mean to be derogatory towards people who've had it, but that's what it's referred to in movies as shock therapy.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to be vulnerable here with you because you're being vulnerable about your story, and I've not actually shared this publicly ever. So Mary Alice was like, Tisha, this is going to resonate with you. But not many people know that I grew up I was adopted, and my mom was actually addicted to prescription medication. And as you're telling this story and as you are sharing what was going on in your head and using that analogy, I am so empathetic as an adult now. And she passed away almost 10 years ago, but I'm so empathetic to what she was going through as I'm hearing your story. Because like you said, I was watching her as a child make these decisions, not really understanding what was happening, but over the course of time, learning that she actually did have the shock therapy. And at the time period that this was happening, it was like the last resort. Nobody knew how to support people who were struggling mentally. And I want to hit again on what you said, because this is resonating with me now as a mom of a 16-year-old boy. And you hit on it, and because you said it, I was going to bring it up, so I'm just going to continue. But this is from 2004, these statistics. So if you're listening or watching, make sure that you are doing your own diligent research on these numbers. This is just what I pulled today. But in 2004, there were 48,824 Americans who died by suicide. Nearly 80% of those deaths were male, even though males make up half the population. Now, I know mental health doesn't just hit one gender, but I am old enough now and have experienced enough with my own mom, and now I'm raising a son, and I've been married before, and I can tell you that there is this myth for men. And I watch my dad as well struggle as he's supporting my mom. There is this myth that you cannot feel anything. You shouldn't be talking about it. You have to be really strong. You have to do all of these things. And you were telling your story, and I wrote down 2 words: the pressure. The pressure that is on really everyone. But I have known friends who have lost their husbands by suicide. And I am now raising a 16-year-old son, really trying to equip myself to give him all of the tools he needs to be able to move forward in his life and understand that that pressure isn't what he needs to hold on to. So in the segue of your story, I just want to ask you, even as a former teacher, what is your advice to parents who are raising sons, to teachers who are seeing some of this in their classroom? Do you have just 1 or 2 things that you could tell us to do right now today to support the young people in our lives?
Yeah. The number one question that I get asked, which is in the family of what you just asked when I speak, is I've got a friend who's suffering. I've got a student who's suffering. I see kids who are suffering. What can I do to ask them to open up?
Mm-hmm.
And I flip it on them and I say, what makes people the most comfortable to open up to you is when you open up first to them and create the space for them to be able to walk into.
Okay.
It does not matter what, like, there's a campaign out there, like when we go into the part of the organization and change of verbiage and all that stuff, there's a campaign out there that all these nonprofits are running that said, how are you doing, comma, and then really was in really big letters. And their whole emphasis on it was like, no, we got to ask deep down how someone's doing. And I wanted to shake those organizations and say, so in other words, you've already asked them how they're doing and they're not sharing with you. But by taking a spotlight and putting it on their face and going, we really want to know how you're doing.
Yeah.
Now they're going to share with you. That's not how people
That
share.
doesn't build trust.
That doesn't
right?
build trust. When a mom, you might think as a mom or a dad, you're being quirky when you say to your kids, you know, work was really tough, and your kids are like, what are you talking to me about today? Why are you even telling me? I don't want hear that from my mom or dad. When you normalize that you come home, I don't want anyone to feel like they have to reveal intimate secrets.
Sure.
Just share that you struggle and come in and make it a normal part of what your communication is with people. When I do presentations, one of the examples that we give is how people feel when they're about to go fly in a plane. And after I show a plane and wings and flies in the sky, it's like a train with wings, and you get to with Wi-Fi and all this fun stuff. And then I show 2 pictures of an airplane, a blue and a red one. The blue one has a smile in the cockpit and the wing is welcoming me on. The red one has fangs coming out of the cockpit and the wing is pushing you away. And I say, how many people think of the red plane and you see some kids raise their hand, but you see teachers raise their hand? First time I ever did that was a 2nd grade teacher. I'd never met her before. It was at Manhasset Elementary School on Long Island. She finds her from Eric, I got to tell you what happened. I didn't even think about it. I just reacted when that picture came up. My kids ran in my classroom after. I'm going to say her name is Miss Smith, not to out her. Miss Smith, you're afraid of planes? We didn't think you were afraid of anything, right? And now she said, I scrapped my entire lesson plan for the rest of the day, and all we spent was talking about the things that we are afraid of.
Wow.
And I don't want anyone to think, oh, snowflake and all those other things. That's not what I'm saying. Radical vulnerability. Then we lead to, what do we do about it? That we're not victims, that we are people that can take control of it, that there are things we can do about it. But the only way you get people to truly open up is by creating the safe space with your own vulnerability. They will never open up by being peppered with questions.
I love what you've said here and what I've heard. So just correct me if I'm wrong. You don't have to overshare, but don't pretend. Be appropriately vulnerable, and acknowledge your challenges, but ultimately be human.
It doesn't matter if it's a therapist or a teacher. And I know therapists were not traditionally trained this way. you're going to open up more to your therapist when your therapist shows you that they're a human being. Now, there's a line between your therapist shouldn't be your friend and shouldn't be gossiping with you. But if your therapist says, I don't love going on hikes, I went on vacation and it was difficult for me, you're going to share what some of your fears are when you're about to go on vacation more readily, easily accessible in your brain and your heart to be able to share that, to go over why is that happening to me when I go to those places when they share. If not, even though it's a therapist, you're going to be like, even if it's 3% of you is holding back, like, this is kind of a weird thing. I don't love spiders. Should I say that? Or, when I'm talking in public, it's difficult. Or I don't know. Like my sister-in-law is really strange and me being around her is whatever the thing is, we're afraid of being judged based on what we have going on in our head. And anyone could say, oh, I'm an open book. I'll share it out there. I'll call a little bit of BS because you as humans, we react to how other people react to us. And so when someone else creates that openness for us, that's what helps us to go into that spot.
Okay. This is so good. That advice was so good. Now we're getting back on track again because I want to hear what happened next.
Okay. So, inpatient, I'm told to do the ECT, and I'm given a DVD in 2017 to watch and I'm on a floor where there are people. There's one guy circling in the corner. We're on an L-shaped floor. No one's allowed to talk to him. That's all we hear. There's a nurse that watches him. No one's allowed to talk to him. We're not allowed to ask how long he's been there. Everyone else, there's people walking up and down the floor, talking to themselves, drooling as they're walking, in gowns, coloring books, not able to put sentences together themselves. Well, when you're told by the attending psychiatrist, ECT is your last resort, and this is the plethora of people that you see who are there, or the whole, examples that are in front of you, you think, unless I do what that person tells me, I'm not going to get better. And this is my fate is, these people right here, right? So I sought the advice of my parents, but in 2017, you don't have friends to call up and say, Tish, Rick, when you were given ECT or the option of ECT, what did you do? And I'd still say, even to this day, that's not an easy topic to discuss. So I acquiesced and I did, what she recommended. And so the way ECT works is you get wheeled to a separate part of the hospital in a wheelchair. Your vital signs are taken before. You're not allowed to eat from, 11 o'clock the night before up until the morning of when they're doing the ECT. And they put you down on a almost, it looks like a laid out chair, like it would be in a dentist's office. Like it's a small room. At least this is my experience. You're put an oxygen mask on your face. Then electrodes are put on your head. You're given a IV in your arm, an IV in your leg, and a blood pressure monitor on your leg. And there's an anesthesiologist who's going to basically give you propanol. I forget the
Propofol.
The one that Michael Jackson.
It's the white one. Yeah, Jace did that one when he was doing chemo. I have a question for you. Now we're in the chair. We're in the chair. Was there anything intuitively inside of you that was going, this is not it. This is not.
I asked. So the administering psychiatrist of the ECT was different than the attending psychiatrist on my floor. It's a gentleman versus a woman, and it was so weird because I'd never asked this before. Like as I'm about to get my first treatment, I'm like, how does this work? Why is this going to help me?
Yeah.
And he literally, I remember the cadence of his voice. He goes, Eric, we don't know. Okay. And so basically, ECT has been around since the mid 1900s. Yep. There's different theories about it was meant to try to reverse seizures in people who had epilepsy. Key point is it wasn't targeted as a mental health treatment to start off. And then they found that there was a lift in mood from people who got it. Now, if you could explain to me how you prove the concept of lift in mood, I would love to hear that. So that's what I'm thinking as this doctor's telling me this. Like, so basically this is less resort, but experimental in such, because there's no real evidence to be able to say that this actually works. So basically I'm like a computer that you're hitting a hard restart button on, trying to get the brain to restart.
And you're hoping that it's gonna get back online the way it was before.
Yeah. And by the way, I'd never been put under general anesthesia before. So this is the first time I'm doing it. I know I'm going to have 12 sessions of it. So I wake up the first time. I'm going into more detail with you on this than I typically do because you mentioned to me a family member having it. And all I remember is going, they go to me, what's your name? I didn't know what my name was. What state are you in? I don't know what state. What hospital is this? I don't know what hospital is. And I'm freaking out because it feels like for anyone to be in the seat of what it's like when you get woken up in the middle of REM sleep and you for a second forget that, I'm at my aunt's house, right?
Right.
Imagine that, but prolonged for about an hour. So I'm hooked up to these monitors and these lines, and I'm not in a bed that's cemented to the ground. And so I'm moving around because I'm like, I can't place where I'm at. And stuff started coming out of me to the point where for my 11 other treatments, they had 5, I can't make this up. They had 5 male nurses that would wake up with me. One would hold my head down with 2 hands, one on a shoulder, one on a shoulder, one on a knee, one on a knee, because they had to make sure if they put me in straps on a bed that's portable, I would have flipped the bed over. But if they put humans on to have give to it as I'm waking up and I'm freaking out from that, at least they could hold me down, but the bed's not going to flip over.
Yeah.
As you're telling this story, this part right here, all I can think of is the additional trauma that they are now creating.
Yeah.
That is in your body, because just by you I know it doesn't even hit on what it felt like to experience that, but
the psych ward, I skip so many things, like what the ER, what are they called? Intake experience was like when 2 resident doctors came to me and said, tell us what's going on, Eric. And I said, I don't know. I'm staring at the wall right now. And I feel like if you didn't come in the room, I just keep staring at the wall. Nothing's in my brain right now.
Yeah.
And they look at each other, young man, young woman, and they're just residents. Right. I don't know what a resident is at this point. They just seem like psychiatrists to me. And I go, well, have you guys never heard that before? And they're like, well, not exactly that. And so already I'm like, okay, I'm being basically told I'm the messed up of the messed up people, the way they're reacting.
Yeah.
When I got in, there was a person sitting in the hallway, and the guard lets me and takes all my stuff. And the guy who was when a patient sitting in the hallway, he goes, welcome to hell. It's miserable here. Right. So I get admitted at like, it was, I think it was like 11 o'clock at night when they took me in the ambulance to the Westchester facility that I was related to Cornell Med. They take your shoelaces, they take everything from you, and they give you this little pouch that's got the toothpaste and the toothbrush in it.
Essentially, you're already a prisoner in your own brain, essentially, and now they're treating you like a prisoner in this place.
It absolutely was like a prisoner. Like, this is where you have to say goodbye to your parents. Like, they don't get to go past this line, and like they're saying it in that way. I had been on Xanax up until that point for the 2.5 years I've been going through this. Well, Cornell believes that you should be on Klonopin instead of Xanax as your benzodiazepine, and they switched me overnight.
Wow.
I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I don't know what withdrawals are because I've never done drugs before, and I'm having these shakes. I think I'm having a heart attack, okay? So, yeah, there's a lot more to the experience that mentioned having a book like that. I
was about to say, you're in the process of writing a book. Your book is going to be coming out. So if you are listening, I want you to save this episode, bookmark this episode. We're going to have Eric back on when his book comes out so we can talk more about that. I think what I want to know, Eric, is did you end up finishing all of those ECT treatments? And then at the end of it, like, then what? What is the treatment plan then?
Yeah. So this is where I decided to get into this space because of what happened after the ECT. So I'm one of those people that when you tell me to start something and you tell me it needs to get done for you to feel better or for you to finish this project, I'm going to do all of them. So with as miserable as I was, I do all 12 over 5 weeks. Wow. And there were 0 people on my floor for the 5 weeks with all the people coming in and out, 0 who are getting ECT on my floor. So I have no one to I'm not saying that to be a victim. I'm saying that to be like, they're not
isolating.
And they're not bringing a social worker on each time to be like, let's talk about what the experience is like and how we can help you. And none of that. It's basically like, come back to your room and sit in your room by yourself until we have a DBT group with the rest of the floor. Wow. Right. And so I eventually leave the hospital after the 5 weeks I was there in the 12 sessions, no better than the 2.5 weeks. And what I'm deemed, I should say, by the hospital is treatment resistant, and then fill in the blank of any one of the labels that they've given me up to that point: depression, melancholic depression, anhedonic depression, PTSD, OCD, ADHD. it could be one, some, or many of those, but it's basically treatment resistant, right?
Right.
And so I think my life is over because my path so far that I've only been told is I'm doing all the gold standards, med management and talk therapy, and then I did the last resort treatment. So what else is there? So my parents, being educators, they go to these continuing education courses all the time, and they go to this one course that is not up their alley at all, and it's called integrative breathing practices. I have no idea what the term integrative means. My parents are not the two type of people. They're educators who would go to, school in sweaters and button-down shirts. They wouldn't go to like a tree hugging breathing thing. And so my mom comes back from the course and she's like, I can't explain it. I've had this pain in my neck. I don't believe in these things, but this woman was helping us breathe. And it didn't go away, but the pain got better. And then I ran up to her after the class. And I said, do you help people? And the only, vocabulary my mom had for her at the time was, do you help people who have anxiety and depression? Mm-hmm. And the woman's like, I help people with their mental health, through breath work. Yeah. Sure. Have your son make an appointment with me. So she had an opening. 3 days later, I come and I go to her house. And now I'm expecting the appointment because she's a psychologist. I'm expecting the appointment to go like every other appointment therapy. I've had. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Which is, what are your symptoms, Eric? You list them. Yeah. Based on your symptoms, here's your diagnosis. Based on your diagnosis, here's how we treat you.
That's not what she did.
No. She's like, Eric, we got an hour together. The couch is your one-person stage, and I'm your one-person audience. And for the next hour, I don't want to ask you another question. So I'm going to call it a performance because you are just going to share extemporaneously what comes out of your mouth.
Yep.
Tell me the story of your life as you tell it to yourself, meaning you are the only one living in your head. Other people might have seen it differently.
Yeah.
I want the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, everything in between. And there's no rules. You could scream, you could curse, you could look at the pillow or the wall or punch a pillow. Any volume's okay, ready, go.
This couch is your oyster.
Yeah, basically. And so I start sharing, 4 years old. I remember getting this Disney toy from my grandfather, and that's an early memory. And I got this baseball glove and started playing a sport at 7 years old. And then I get up to 9 years old. This is Tish with your son. This is where things will probably resonate. So I'm the middle of three boys, and my older brother, 4 years older than me, as I start sharing this part of the story, keep in mind what I'm about to share with you are the pieces that she extracted out over this hour. This is not exclusively what I shared. But my older brother is 13 when I'm 9, breaks his femur bone in a sports accident, is put into a body cast for a year. Like back then, like the white cast that literally went up to here, you poop out of a hole in the back. So he had to be homeschooled, couldn't go to school, but heals from that, cast comes off, he goes back to school. Mm-hmm. A month later, now where it'll really intersect with your story, he gets diagnosed with ALL.
Wow.
So children's leukemia. And in the late 80s, early 90s, back then it was a 50-50 survival rate.
Yes.
So he gets the chemo, he gets the radiation. It's a 5-year protocol back then.
Yes.
Miracle after 5 years.
By the way, it's still about the same. So we need more research in the childhood cancer space too. Yes.
I'm going based on historical.
Absolutely. Right? So,
no. So he goes to remission. We're all celebrating. A month later, he's in a Jeep Wrangler with his friends. There's an open top and no seatbelt in the back. And he flies out of the back and lands on the parkway because the car was driving erratically. Fortunately, no cars behind him ran into him. They all stopped. My mom gets a call. I'll never forget. I'm home. She drops to the floor screaming because of what they tell her. We go to the hospital. He's in ICU. Eye is all messed up. Loses partial vision in his eye and ends up being in ICU for a month. Heals from that. He goes to college. His junior year of college, he's feeling a pain in his knee. Mm-mm. Same cancer from childhood's come back. So you think it'd be sports medicine related because it's a knee. But the way that ALL grows, it grows from the marrow. Yes. So you have malignant white blood cells that come out of the marrow and they press on the bone as they're replicating. And so that's where the pain was coming from. And now that he's got cancer for the second time, they have to give him a stronger dose of the chemo, which fortunately 10 years later in the late 90s now, early 2000s, the chemo treatments are stronger, which is good. But what they're doing to his body over time, you're starting to see him hunch over and put a weight on, is that while it kills many of the malignant white blood cells, it also kills many of the healthy white blood cells. Yeah. And so we switch places. I'm going to school upstate. He comes downstate to Hofstra to go to law school. Incredible part of the story. Makes law review while he's in his first year of cancer treatment for the second time around. But I get a call from my father, drive downstate to meet us because we have to bring him to the hospital. He's got 105 fever. So what happened was, because his healthy white blood cells were beaten up so much, infection got in his body and his body went into septic shock.
Yep.
So septic shock, I get to the hospital, the neurologist meets with us and explains to us what's going on. He falls into a coma, and now the tube is breathing for him, and the doctors tell us, listen, it's your choice as a family what to do. We have no idea if there's any brain activity still going on or not. That goes on for 3 months where there's no movement at all, and the tube is just breathing for him. I'm coming back and forth from school. My parents are living at the Ronald McDonald House by him, and eventually 3 months he wakes. Miracle.
Wow.
Asks if the Yankees won the World Series in 1999. Can't make it up. Okay. So we're all celebrating. Well, his kidneys fail from being in the septic shock for so long. So now he's on a dialysis regimen.
Yeah.
Everyone in my family is getting tested to see who's the closest match. My father is. He donates a kidney to him. That's all successful. I get that dream job right out of college at the NBA about a year or two later, and 3 of my close friends at 22, 23, and 24 years of age pass away back to back to back.
Oh, Eric.
So the doctor, the psychologist stops
That
me.
is the compounding of trauma
Yes.
complex, CPTSD. Yep.
But at the time, I don't know any of these things. I'm
Yeah.
just telling a story of my
Sure.
life. So
Sure.
she rolls back to me and says, Eric, we have 10 minutes to go in this session. What else happened to you as a child and young adult that impacted your mental health that I need to know about? And I say to her, what do you mean impacted my mental health?
Yes.
You asked me to tell you about my life. I started with Disney stories and baseball gloves. Yes, I got up to age 24 where my friends passed away, but from 24 to 33, I was running sales for the Phoenix Suns, New Jersey Devils, and Florida Panthers. My brain was fine. I didn't have any issues.
Best time of your life, right?
Yes. And I was like, my mental health crash didn't happen until it was overnight in Florida where the rug just got pulled out from underneath me.
Yeah.
And she says, well, Eric, I appreciate your perspective on the story of your life as you told it to yourself, but let me give you a different perspective of what actually happened to you. She said, when you were an NBA executive, if you were wearing a nice suit and entertaining people in the front row seat of a game, feet on the floor, and these 7-foot athletes are running them down the court, and as they run by you, the sweat flies off them and hits you, or they dive for a loose ball and they land in your lap. You're going to go home after a 3-hour NBA game, put the suit away for the dry cleaner, take a shower, put on a nice new suit the next day. You don't feel the effects of the sweat. No one sees the effects of sweat on you, and it doesn't matter. It was a 3-hour game. Okay, so you got impacted for the 3 hours. You had a front row seat. It was for the game of life, not for an NBA basketball game. And the game of life was represented by your brother in a muddy wrestling ring, then your friends eventually in a muddy wrestling ring. The key is you knew the wrestling matches were going on. It's not that you didn't know they were going on. What you didn't realize was how the mud that they were wrestling in was splattering and hitting you and splattering and hitting you. And the reason is, go back to teachers, what we were talking about. Eric, you were so focused on everything else going on in the arena, the Jumbotron, the LED lights, the music, the dancing, which I came to realize what she meant by that was Eric, the athlete growing up and winning Scholar Athlete Awards and being captains of teams. And then eventually Eric, the sports executive who's, oh, what do I need to do to get this next position to work to this next team and this next title? That I didn't notice how the mud was caking up and building on me. Now, you use the term trauma, right? Well, she says what that is chronic stress and trauma compounding. However, especially in 2017, she said a lot of people use the term trauma, but they don't understand that trauma is not the event. It's the physiological change to your body that creates a disconnect between your brain and your body and impacts structures in your nervous system because you've been living in fight flight for so long that the structures eventually say, well, this must be how we need to be perpetually because you're asking for it all the time. And contained within that, for anyone who thinks I haven't been through that much or Eric's story or Tisha's story is more advanced than mine, I would tell you what was a bigger impact on me on that mud, even with all the events that I had, was not necessarily the events. It was the fears and the thoughts in between the events. Because when your brother is sick, or anyone who's listening, you've got a family member who's sick, or you got someone who's been abused, your brain going, what if, what might happen? That's why COVID messed up so many people. They were out of work, or school wasn't back in, or they're wearing masks, and they're going, what if it never returns to normal? What if we never get back to this place? What if I can't ever be in person with people?
What if I get sick? What if I die? What if somebody
what if a family member's in the hospital and I don't get to see them and that I lose them without ever having connected with them?
I want to stop right here because what you're saying is going to resonate with the educators. It's going to resonate with Rick. I already know that what you're saying is resonating with Rick because anytime one of us gets really silent, like this has happened to me on an episode, it's really impacting us. But I want to point out that trauma can include the following, and I'm going to kind of stress on that. Now, Eric, your story and my story are so similar because the amount of trauma that I had gone through growing up and then sitting there and going, what do you mean you're diagnosing me with chronic PTSD? I just told you my life story. And she was like, yeah, I don't think what you notice is that your ACE score is like an 8 or a 9. Right. Typically people's ACE score, and if you are listening, you can research ACE scores and you'll find out more about that. Typically people have an ACE score of like 2 or 3, And so I'm like, what do you mean? I don't even know what that means. But here's what I want the teachers listening to hear. Trauma can include, but is not limited to the following: emotional neglect, bullying, perfectionism, chronic stress. Let me underline that a billion times for you. Difficult work environments. Let me also underline that for you as a teacher. Divorce, grief, financial instability. I could go on, but what I want the people listening to know is, and I want to reiterate what Eric just said, and I'm also telling this to Rick, just because your story is not mine and Eric's, do not compare what our stories are and then go, well, there's no way I can have trauma and there's no way I have PTSD or burnout. Do not tell yourself that lie, because perfectionism alone, and I heard you say in the beginning, Eric, you talked about the pressure. You were living your dream life, but the pressures that came with that were also compounded with all the things that you had experienced before. And that's exactly how my story goes. It's exactly it. So you get to this point then on the couch, your session is over. Is that the moment you went, what do I do?
So the end of the session, as she's explaining this to me, I'm very skeptical, and it's going to mirror some of the things you just said on that list, because it poured out of me. She said, so she's giving me this explanation. I said, Donna, that makes a lot of sense for me because you just took me through the highlights of what I've been through. I get it. Physiological changes, cool. I said, it makes no sense for the rest of society. And she's like, what? And I said, because if all it takes is having a front row seat of these muddy wrestling rings for things to impact us, that I didn't need to be the one who was flying out of the Jeep, that I didn't need to be the one who was either in the coma or with my brother perpetually every single day, then take me out of the equation at 35 now, take your average 15-year-old, and what rolls out of my tongue is your list. I'm like, watch your parents get into fights and get a divorce. Watch your parents lose their job and lose the house. Watch your friend being bullied on the schoolyard, verbally abused by an adult. Yes. Watching your friend or hearing that your friend is being sexually abused because they confided you about that.
Yes.
Like I said, there's not a 15-year-old, let alone 35, 55-year-old or 85-year-old who hasn't dealt with some or many of those things. I didn't know what ACEs were then. ACE stands for, by the way, adverse childhood experiences.
Thank you.
So I have no idea. So I'm saying, Donna, this doesn't make any sense, because if that's what mental health is, then people would have told me that at a young age. And much like I ran up and down stadium stairs because coaches told me to do it, even though it's on an incline, and I would say, why am I doing an incline run when I run on a football and basketball court that's flat? And they would say, you're going to fatigue your lung capacity and your cardiovascular capacity beyond what you have to do on a typical game, and you'll be able to outrun your component. Okay, coach, let me do it. No one told me to do that because my body and my brain together were being impacted by this trauma thing that you're talking about. And so she stops me. She's like, listen, you're passionate about this. I get it. I agree with you that everyone's impacted, varying degrees. However, if you don't get yourself healthy first, you can't attack this problem at all. So let's get you healthy first.
Say that again for the teachers listening who are about to go into their classrooms, who are about to go away from their beach vacations and their time off. I want you to repeat that for them one more time.
Yeah, it was if you don't get yourself healthy first, no matter how passionate you are about this topic, you're not even going to be able to do the things that you think you can escape with, which is help everyone with, right? Which is a default that if I find something I'm passionate about working on, then I dive into it, right? So she sends me to this weekend breathing course.
Yes.
I'm the only male, only one under 40 at the time, and only one born in this country. So imagine me and 8 Indian women and 9 yoga mats, right?
Yes.
And they're all, walking around like this and hugging each other. And I can't wait to see the world back in high definition. And
I know what that means as you're saying that. The people listening probably are like, what does that even mean? And I'm like, yes, this is exactly where he needed to be.
And these are like women who they're used to this practice. It's called a Kriya. They're just coming for a brush up on it. I'm going to learn it for the first time. And I start getting into the science of it. We'd be a whole other podcast, but a little piece, they're like, listen, when you go through something that's difficult, think about how you change how you breathe. You see a car accident, you go, oh, you got a bad call.
Hold your breath, and my shoulders raise up. And that's what I've learned is sometimes I'll just be sitting at my desk and I'll be like, relax.
Exactly.
Just drop, right?
But we don't realize that because what keeps us feeling protected is staying in that spot. And we think that feels better, but it's actually sending a signal to our body back to that our brain and body don't talk to one another. We're telling our body just through our actions, not through our brain helping our body better understand. It's just our brain reacting to something, and then the body goes, something's not right. Okay, we got to do something about it. So what if through a rhythmic breathing pattern, through something called the vagus nerve that gets overused because most people don't understand it?
We're going to do a whole nother podcast on this because I love talking about this. Rick knows. I will talk about the vagus nerve and the dysregulation and all of that. We're having you back, but continue. Keep telling us.
So it was enough of me to understand, okay, if the vagus nerve is 2 branches, goes from the brainstem through the neck, one branch innervates over the heart and lungs, the other one over the other vital organs. That's the carrier messenger through my breath that has my breath passes through that, tells my body something's okay or something. If I'm having an even in and out breath versus the is going to tell my body and then all the organs and then all the parts underneath it, guess what? You're not in a great spot right now. We got to do something about it.
And staying in that fight or flight, this is what happened to me. Staying in that fight or flight phase, like you said, like our body is like this all the time. That is what causes us to get sick. And that happened to me. I was in fight or flight for so long. And what I've learned, and this is what my somatic therapist does with me, she purposely will put me in fight or flight and then put my body in rest and digest. And it is 1 full hour of the back and forth to change the program in my brain.
I'm glad you brought that up because it was just one breathing practice. Yeah. But the breathing practice called Sudarshan Kriya comes from India. And there's actually 20 breaths of very slow in and out, 40 breaths of medium in and out, and then 40 breaths of very fast. Yes. And then you cycle through that. And the whole point of it is you're training the body to go from this hypervigilant, quick breathing pattern to a much slower, more even pattern. That way, when you go into that place next time naturally, because life is going to hand you those situations where your breath is going to change, you're more flexible to be able to bounce back into your parasympathetic response, right?
Absolutely. But I have a question, though, for you before you keep going, is as you were doing that breath work, did you find yourself, because you were there, right? You went to this completely different country. Like, were you so exhausted after the breath work? Did you feel like you sometimes feel when you're doing a workout?
I wasn't exhausted. I was frustrated because the whole I want to see the world in high definition that everyone was talking about and the beauty after the class and that, we had did this exercise where they gave us each a grape and you're not allowed to bite into it. You have to hold it in your mouth first and anticipate the what it's going to taste like. And eventually after they describe it to you, then you get to take one bite and feel the juice hit the back of your throat and your tongue and describe what that feeling is like to one another. Trying to show that like we usually grab 10 grapes at once, throw them in our mouth and get the sugar surge of that, the glucose or the glycogen or what all I always forget the different science terms there, but that gets into your system. It was an appreciation class as much as it was in a breathing class, right? To slow down and so it was very hard for me. I wasn't necessarily tired as much as I was just frustrated because my analogy was to them, if you're saying you want to go from seeing standard definition to high definition, I want to go from seeing nothing on my TV to at least static. Give me some static because I can't see anything right now. And their rallying cry to me, it was a volunteer group for this nonprofit organization. And they said to me, give it 40 days. Give it 40 days of consistent practice. I
like that.
The practice is 45 minutes a day. I wasn't doing anything else in my life at that point. So 45 minutes was not the end of the world. And I was a terrible patient outside of those 45 minutes. So for people who think you have to be compliant all 24 hours a day, and you have to practice acceptance.
You weren't perfect, right?
It's not perfect. I was just, and all these women and I
were showing up.
I was showing up, and we had accountability partners. So the other 8 women in the class were giving each other pounds on text messages like, hey, we got it done today. We did it today. Like that was our way of checking in with each other. So I felt nothing better and was really upset 29 days in. The morning of the 30th day, I woke up and 2 things came back to me. I wanted to make scrambled eggs for breakfast, and I wanted to watch TV. And when you haven't had those desires in 2.5 years and those 2 things come back, it's the greatest miracle in the world, because now your brain has turned on something that was offline for so long. And that's where you start to go, this shit works. This stuff, excuse me if you need me to dub
No,
that
we
out.
like that. No,
right.
we like that.
Okay.
And actually, I want to hear what Rick has to say, because I know, Rick, we don't really talk about this too much on the podcast. I love that you're here, that I have a partner in crime to talk about this. But Rick, does it or does it not work? The breath work, the things that Eric's talking about? Because I know you have
100%.
integrated this.
Yeah.
Do you have a daily practice? Like you and Eric, I think should be friends on the backside of this podcast, because I will tell Rick, I'll be like, did you do your groundwork today? Did you do your breathing exercises? Have you journaled today? Are you frustrated at work? Journaling will probably help.
Yeah. Tish is my constant reminder. I don't have an app for it or anything getting notifications. Tish is my app and notifications.
Eric has an app. So if you were listening.
Exactly what you're talking about is, and it's something that we use in schools. Like it's
I have it.
The scale is, there's you don't Tish, what you don't have is, and I'll get you an account so you could use it with Rick, group leader to group member version. Where we have the enterprise version. So imagine teachers, one click of a button, being able to send a push notification request. Either, how are you doing? This is how I'm doing, back to opening up your own vulnerability. Here's a recommended exercise based on what the algorithm tells us, or here's a recommended exercise that I want to give to the class almost as an assignment. So it has 2 sides essentially to the app. The check-in language, which is what everyone was seeing on here, which is based off of polyvagal is the name of the science, which shows the shifts in the nervous system. If you start to see trends over time, you're now able to help people see, I've been staying to this place on our right of the scale for periods of time. Now, what do I need to do, just like any other scale, to get back to the left? Lose weight or lower my blood pressure or lower my inflammation levels.
I want to read this scale, because we have now referenced it a couple of times. So on the same here scale, on the left side, all the way, the yellow, I love the yellow, is thriving. I love the verbiage on this. Let me just say, as an educator, normally these are not the words that I would have associated in my social emotional learning, but thriving, and then gliding, and then surviving, and then fluctuating, struggling, and sinking. And I think those words are so helpful. And I want you to know, I keep this on my fridge and I do use it with my son, because as a parent, when you ask a question, or a teacher, and you're like, well, how's your day? Or how are you feeling today? They don't maybe have the words. And so I will tell you, he will not sometimes talk to me, but he will walk over to the fridge and he will point to the blue.
That's it.
And that's all I need to know.
There's no other starting. I'm not trying to, for anyone who thinks I'm pitching the concept.
No.
And by the way, Trish, underneath those words, then there's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So if you go into your app and you click the I next to the scale on the top right, it shows you, we did this thing called psychometric validation through Baylor University to help us understand, what do people believe are their thought, feeling, and behavior changes as they move to a place of regulation to dysregulation, so that your son's fluctuating and my fluctuating, we know is the same spot, not just how we interpret an emoji face.
Absolutely.
Right?
So it's the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviors, which I love. And the color coding is really helpful for people who have ADHD like me, so that I can associate the color to the feeling now, right?
Yes. And even if you dive into, I don't want people to think we just created emojis. We have focus groups around what color elicits what spot. What's the right number of spots on the scale? To your point of your son now being willing to point, there's 6 spots on the scale, not 7 or not 5. Why? Because you need to make a trade-off. Instead of saying I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm all right, am I on the upswing blue or on the downswing side of fine, or okay in the purple? all the words that you're saying you wouldn't have thought as an educator, that's often what you don't see in textbooks.
Yep.
We use ing words because it's movement. That's a lot different.
Yes.
Even with saying I have ADHD, it doesn't need to be, so therefore I'm the ADHD person. It's I'm in a phase of struggling or sinking right now, and I can get back to a better place. Right?
Do you know what's interesting, Eric, is that Rick will ask me something like, "Hey, Tish, how are you today? Hey, Tish, how's it going?" And I am always in a habit of saying, "It's okay." And he has gotten to where he will challenge me back and say, okay doesn't tell me really where you are. So before we knew about your scale, we were using, there's a circle out there with all of the, you know what I'm talking about? I forgot what it's called, but we were using that. And he would say, go back to that picture. I want you to pick. Let's start on the outside of the circle. Let's start with those emojis and words. And then let's deep dive through where you're actually, what are you feeling? And it's interesting because as kids, as a Gen Xer, for example, or a millennial, we weren't taught how to really talk about our feelings. And I talked about that with Mary Alice. Like, no, we don't talk about our feelings here. Everything's fine. And we want everybody outside to think everything's fine. And that's where I'm okay comes from, because I was really taught that as a kid. Don't really deep dive that. It's the same thing culturally in the UK when you go to places and they say, are you all right? When I first went to the UK and they were asking me, are you all right? And I was like, I think I am. Like, are you seeing that something is wrong with me right now? And so I think, we get in that habit culturally of asking someone, are you okay? How are you? Are you all right? But are we really asking them? And I think everybody's in autopilot because they'll be like, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. So I love this challenge. I love that you have challenged us in such a positive way. Now, we have gone on for an hour and a half, and I'm going to tell you that I'm already written down your second episode and your third episode and what topics we're covering. So I hope that you will come back, to expand on your story, to expand more with the pillars of the Same Here organization. I want to talk more about, because we're getting into the school year, I would love for you to just share with us, the teachers listening, the leaders listening, what can they put into practice once they get settled into that new school year? I also would love to chat about how we can support what you're doing. And then I want you to come back in November and let's maybe give away some books to our listeners. I know that people need this topic because they've been texting me about this topic, teacher well-being. You have a catchphrase, and I want you to kind of share that with us. We talk about mental health, and you were talking about labels. If you are at Target and somebody says, Eric, what do you do? What is your philosophy on mental health? In one sentence, what would you say?
I would say, you said it before in the mission statement, normalizing the conversation, normalizing. Now
I put you on the spot.
I'm stumbling on my own words, but here's what I'll say. What I'll say is I take mental health through a different lens and help people see that everyone is going through something and that mental health lives on a continuum. It's not for 1 in 5 people with mental illness. It's for 5 in 5 people, all of whom face challenging life events. And when I asked you to put a pin in that one comment you made earlier, if you flip the script away from what label you have and instead start asking the question of what have you been through, every single person in the room ends up opening up and feeling a part of the same group. Childhood divorce, growing up in a single parent household, being a part of a foster care system.
Childhood cancer.
Yes. Okay. And by the way, that's a direct one-to-one, but now let's build off that. What about someone who had a family member or a child that had childhood Crohn's disease?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can still relate to that person. Yes. Oh, what's it like when your child is sick? We are brandished online into these different echo chambers, believing that I need to have been through the exact same thing you've been through in order to understand.
Oh, yeah.
You and the only way you can understand me is you've been through the exact same thing that I've been through. One, no one goes through the exact same experience. Yeah. No one. Okay. Second thing is, here's where I'll challenge the people who believe that, oh, Eric, you're wrong. That people who have major OCD only understand people who have major OCD. Here's a little wrinkle I'm going to put it. Okay. You start sharing back and forth like, oh my God, you experienced that too. Oh my God, your brain goes to that too. Oh my God, your brain goes to that too. And then one person starts going, yeah, one of mine, which is really difficult, is when I drive over overpasses in Florida and they're really high up, my brain is tricking me and going, turn the car to the left, turn the car to the left, turn the car to the left. And it's scaring me. And then the other person goes, well, yeah, everything else you've said so far, I feel, but mine is more like when I'm walking on sidewalks, I can't get off the sidewalk without stepping on every single line in the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. Immediately you go, I'm a special brand of messed up that person isn't, because they just had everything that I have, but they don't have that one thing. It must be that my brain is the one that's more damaged than anyone else's. Mm-hmm. We have to stop trying to search for exacts. Emotional pain is emotional pain, and it dysregulates us. When it dysregulates us, we have commonalities within our symptoms: cognitive distortions, malaise, lack of clarity of thought, right? Brain fog, fatigue. That then manifests into slightly different details of each one of those things, that if all you're searching for is exacts, you're never going to find that one-to-one. You have to be able to relate to people on a human level, that you went through pain, I went through pain. Yes. And now the struggle of symptoms generally is the struggle of symptoms generally. Let's support one another in what that is. That's what the concept of same here is let's get away from the labeling. Let's get away from the binaries. Let's get away from who has it and who doesn't. And let's come together because everyone's going through something.
That's so good. That's so good. And we are going to end it there, because that message is what we want our audience to resonate on until the next time that we have you on. Rick, Eric, this is so good. I know I talked a lot and Rick talked not so much, but Eric, I need you to know your story, your movement resonates so much with the two of us. And I know will resonate with our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I think the biggest one is, Eric, if our listeners want to follow you, your journey, where's the best place to follow you, check out the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I'll give our various channels where folks can go. So the one I'm probably most active on is Instagram, which is @samehere_global. Twitter is also the same, @samehere_global. I do a lot of my own personal posting on LinkedIn. I know a lot of educators like going on LinkedIn. So under my name, as you see written there, Kussin is the last one. But on LinkedIn, we have a brand page. So I try to, keep that updated. I'm not as good on YouTube. We have tons of videos, but it's not a platform. TikTok, we're starting to do more and more. But here's what I'll say about social media for people finding us. Please try to reach out personally if we can help you in any way. And that's not like a biz dev comment. Mm-hmm. That's because, put a tinfoil hat on my head if you want, who are the biggest sponsors on these social media platforms? The pharmaceutical industry. Yes. What does the pharmaceutical industry want? You to believe that you are isolated, alone, someone did something to you, you're a victim, and you need what they're selling. When you have an organization that cuts through that message in a simplified way and helps people understand we all go through things and can hold hands and heal in community, they don't want that message out there. So I would love for you to follow us. I'm probably one of the only people who has a social media account that's like, sure, follow us, but you might not see much of us. So like I'm cutting myself at the knees, because you can only be on social media so long until you understand what shadow banning and suppression is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have tons of celebrity athletes who are willing to put our message out there and do. Yes. They don't let it get out wide because they don't want this to be normalized, because a CEO of a pharmaceutical industry does not want their profits to be cut into by people going, wait a second, I could call my friend Rick and Tish and we can check in with one another, and that supports me and makes me not have to reach for the thing that fixes me.
Yes.
They don't want that message out there.
It's true, Eric. It's true. We're going to include all of these links in there, and I'm just going to affirm your message because I speak a lot on neurodivergent learning, my own experience, have found a great community on TikTok, and I also have seen the drop in the views and the engagement. So you're right. It's all by design. But like Eric said, if you want to reach out to him, you can also reach out to us. You can email us. We'll put you in touch with Eric, get you connected. Of course, download the app, which is what I'm going to say. I follow you on LinkedIn and Instagram. And Rick, if he doesn't today, he will.
I will be if I'm not already. Absolutely. But yeah,
thanks
that was
again,
fantastic.
Eric. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My pleasure, guys. I really appreciate having me on. We'll come back and do it again.
Yes.
That's been brilliant. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not following us already, please do so. It's massive support for us, and it will keep you up to date for any future episodes that we release. And until next week, we'll see you then. Bye for now.